But going back to your question of how
Yes.
I approach anime when it comes to scripts,
Sorry,
it
it
depends
went
on.
so far in a different direction.
Yeah, you know what? I'm surprised I remembered, to be honest. Uh, I guess I would stand more in the middle because though, like example again for Steins Gate. Steins Gate is a dub that it took its liberties with a lot of things, but the comedy was comedic. But when it came to seriousness, they were serious, and they didn't. It seemed as though they didn't change anything. I mean, there was a pronunciation error that was throughout the entirety of the dub, but that had nothing to do with. I don't know if that follows under translation or not.
Pronunciation can be weird. Was it like a character's name, or was it like a
Yes, it was a
term?
character's name. Yes,
Okay,
because it was like a Lulu to a Ruru, kind of like
gotcha.
that.
Yeah, then that can be sometimes that can fall on a licensor thing. I've seen before where licensors, and I'll try to keep this tangent short. I've seen before where like licensors would tell the production like, oh, change this name to this, even though the other spelling or pronunciation would make a little bit more sense to an English speaker. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that like L and R are essentially the same letter in Japanese. So they tend to use them interchangeably for different things. And yeah, sometimes stuff like that happens. You find it in a bunch of different random examples. There's that where you mentioned Ruru versus Lulu, and in the original 4Kids dub of One Piece, for all the things that it gets like guff for, I don't blame them for changing Zoro to Zolo, because that easily could have been like either a translation error or even a request from the Japanese studio to say, no, we want it to be Zolo. And it's pretty inconsistent from project to project what licensors want in that regard. But that's just a small tangent about that.
Yeah, I think the most one that everybody points to is Spice and Wolf,
Oh yeah.
because I believe it's supposed to be Horo, and they call her Hollow, which I think sounds much more natural to call her Hollow versus Haro.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've actually heard dubs that have gone back and they've changed things like I forget it was like I can't remember the exact example, but it was in Black Clover. It was like Lola Pechka instead of Laura Pechka or something like that, and it was one of those. They went back in the simuldub and changed the L's to R's. Which I've noticed that a lot with certain simuldubs. I find it interesting, the whole simuldub movement. And going back
Yes.
to the original question, because we tangent here, guys. We do that, and that just means we're having fun.
Yeah.
So
That's how conversation works.
yes, if they were to take a super serious, it all depends on how the dub is, then the vocal performances, because I could look over some liberties if it's not super egregious, or if it's not like, there are certain dubs from certain studios in the past that have put certain jargon in there when it's not necessary, and when that jargon gets put in there, when it's not necessary and it doesn't flow, like you can tell it's definitely an American reference or some type of other reference that doesn't belong there. For example, somebody changing the word, if the original word was supposed to be jerk, and you wanted to if you wanted to curse and
adding swears just haphazardly and stuff.
Yeah, adding swears. I would be more fine if you added swears. Like, I don't doubt a lot of the I Hear a No Sora dub, which is one of the greatest which is my favorite basketball anime of all time. You should all watch it. Joe Daniels kills it, along with many other people. But there's a lot of swearing in that, and I feel it's so with a bunch of teenagers that are delinquents, having them call each other, like in the locker room, being like, and kids, if you're under 18 watching this, you've been warned, there will be some language. Yeah. They call each other things like pussies and assholes, and like, if they mess up, they say, hey, you fucked up, and stuff like that. They would say...
It makes sense for like a delinquent type character or anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if somebody is like, hey, if they change the word jerk and they're like, you're being something like it's something that wouldn't fit either the mouth flaps, which I really wouldn't care about at this point in my life. Yeah, that yeah, people are always like the mouth flaps are matched. I'm like, I don't care.
All I'm gonna say to them is, as somebody who has to time code for a living, and my whole job is to make sure that our cues and lines line up with where the mouth flaps start and end. Pay closer attention to the Japanese versions. They care less about flaps than English dubs do, in most cases.
I never understood that. I've always heard people say that. Yeah, that Japanese, they don't care about lip flaps at all.
No, yeah, and that's not to say it's a bad thing or anything like that, or that it's worse because of it. It just seems, from my experience after having watched so many shows and having to watch it so closely, especially mouth flap in particular, in the Japanese language dubs, and this is another tangent, but like in the Japanese language dubs, mouth flap seems to be more representational. Like, oh, this person's talking. So the mouth is moving to represent the fact that it's talking, almost puppetry-like. And so what they in the Japanese dubs, I find that it seems like the mouth movement is more of a suggestion for, hey, this is just so you're looking at the right character to see that they're saying this line, and it's more the performance that you're listening to that they care about. And I feel like, and I don't know too much into the history as to why English dubs care so much about like making sure that the flaps match completely right on, and it might just have to do with how Western animation is a lot more precise with how they animate mouth movements. It's definitely an aspect of English dubbing where we do try and make sure that the mouth movements fit the audio, but also make sure that the performance works like as a performance on its own. So I just feel like mouth flap is one of the weirdest mouth flap not fitting perfectly is one of the weirdest complaints I hear from sub like purists, because like it's not something that like I feel like it's a non-issue if you're watching it in subtitle, like, and if you're really paying attention, it's not something that bugs you in the Japanese. Why would it bug you in the English dub?
Yeah, I don't understand that either. But going back to the original question,
Yes.
we tangent all the time. It just depends if they go from like if they say jerk to misogynist. It's like why did the word misogyny? This word is insulting, but it doesn't fit the situation.
I see. And that's not something that I have any like real personal experience with, so it's not something that I try to comment on too much. I just feel like if it's something where it feels like you're trying to put in your own judgments of the work into it, I feel like there are sometimes times and places for something like that, but I feel like in some ways it's I don't know. I don't know what specific example that you're referring to at the moment, but it's one of those.
Oh no,
things
just
where,
in general. Just
Yeah,
in general.
I feel like there are some examples that get tossed around a lot as outliers, so that's why I wasn't sure if that was a specific example that you were talking about. But I feel like there are examples that get used to represent the whole of dubbing as in general, and I feel like that's kind of like, I don't know. And I'm not saying that you're doing this as well, because I've seen it around like Twitter and stuff like that, as they'll take examples of that and say like, see, all these dubs do this stuff, and then they'll point to the same 2 or 3 examples that they don't like, and it's like, well, that's an example of where that particular choice wasn't for you, and stuff like that, or that's just not the kind of thing that you like to see in adaptation when it comes to the adapted media that you enjoy and stuff like that. But I feel like, I don't know, it's more important to look at the adaptation as a whole, and did they get the message of the show across? Did they get what was the work of art as a whole still solid, even though you might have criticisms about the minute details here and there, or examples of lines that you think, oh, well, that could have been adapted a little bit better or a little bit differently. As somebody who works in the industry, anytime I watch anime, and I don't really watch a ton of anime, probably as a result of this, I don't really watch a ton of anime in my free time anymore, because all I'm thinking about whenever I watch something in English dub now is like, oh, like every now and then, like a weird adaptation line might stick out to me, like, oh, they could have probably done that a little bit differently or something, but I still try to enjoy it as a whole, and like what was my takeaway from the entire experience versus, man, I weirdly wish they would have changed that line to this something, like the whole thing's bad because they messed up these 1 or 2 lines here and there.
What? Did I just hear something in the background?
Just now?
Yeah, I thought I heard something in the background. Maybe that was Discord being weird?
Maybe. I did hear earlier. I heard like a loud thump that was outside. I think maybe somebody was doing something in the hallway in my apartment complex, but I'm not sure.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, I hope. Oh gosh, I smoked all of it.
Oh no! You weren't supposed to. You're supposed to pace yourself.
Always pace yourself, just like Hinata, except he's a duck out of water. Is that I believe that's a phrase, duck out of water.
I'm not sure actually.
I mean, the term is to represent a person that is usually not meant to be in the position that they are in. For example, Hinata playing a sport that requires height, or again going back to Hihiro no Sora being playing a basketball.
Oh yeah.
Or Kuroko playing basketball, but I don't know if we can count Kuroko because he has superpowers. So
I've actually never seen Kuroko's. Don't tell my friends.
it's okay. I don't have friends.
Oh go.
No.
But no, this is great. Did you have any other questions that you wanted to go down? Because I think it is getting a little bit close to where I should start working on dinner. But
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was we said a lot of nothing we said a lot of nothing. It was really great. But what I was going to ask you, and maybe if you feel free not to answer this or give any like information whatsoever, but how do you feel about the NDA system? Do you think it should go away? Is what I'm trying to ask.
I think to a certain degree, like I think NDAs are fine to the point where most companies want to have control over their IPs and they want to have control over how they go about announcing things, because I do understand to a point where it's like you don't want somebody going in for their first session on a given project and then immediately that day being like, guys, guess what? I'm working on the next game that hasn't even been announced yet. Like, and to that extent, I feel like it's still important to be like, yeah, it's fine. Like the companies want to be able to control how the stuff that they're trying to present to the world, like the new game or the latest sequel or something, they want to be able to say, they want to be the ones in control of what is publicly known about it, if anything at all. I think it's a little bit weird whenever something is released or is about to be released and somebody or like the company doesn't want actors talking about it, or they don't want actors, they don't even credit actors or translators or something like that. And that's something I also kind of like tweeted about earlier. It's like, I feel like if something is released and somebody worked on that something, they need to be credited. You need to credit everybody who ever worked on the things that you put out for money, because they contributed to the value of that product. So I think it is a little bit weird and kind of, honestly, marketing wise, I think it's kind of dumb to restrict actors from talking about stuff that they worked on, especially if it's something that's already been out. And I think that, like, even in the examples I talked about earlier, like if you provided the service of voice matching somebody for a project, or if you provided the service of helping like make a certain actor's work more intelligible, you don't have to credit them as like, oh, stood in for this character, stood in for this actor's voice in these particular lines, or like credited as like vocal touch-ups for a named actor. Like, you don't have to go so specific. You can just be like, hey, assistant, or even just like credit them as additional voices or something like that in the credits, like additional voice provided by X actor. But I think credit is very important. NDAs, I still see the value of, to the point where, like I said, just being able as a company to control what information is out in the world publicly surrounding your IPs and upcoming projects, because you don't want some random person working on the project to like leak it to the whole world. And leaks are like a thing that happens in the music world and in TV film. Like, leaks happen everywhere. It just happens. But like, I can understand not wanting to draw attention to that stuff, because you have all these people working on this project and you want it to be presented to the world in its most what's the word? They want it to be a good impression. You never get a second chance at a first impression, because the first impression is very important. So like, for example, there was leaks about the GTA 6 coming out, and people were already like complaining about how it looked, and it's like, well, this is a leak. This isn't presenting the game at its best. This isn't presenting what they're trying to put together. This is a work in progress, clearly. And so you get people who understand that, but then you also have a good amount of people, like the people I just described, that see the leaked footage, or they see it in an undeveloped stage, and they think, oh, this is going to look terrible. Is this what it's going to look like? When they don't really understand that, like, there's so many layers to production that, like, yeah, I don't know. I can see the value of NDAs. I just think that, like, the extent to which they're used sometimes can go a little bit overboard, like in cases where something's released and they tell the actor, no, you can't say that you did that.
Or for example, and you don't have to comment on this, or for example, when two shows of different versions come out and both actors play the same character in both versions, but the release is out for the press release for the voice actor is out for one of the show, but not the other. So they, when asked about it, they have to be like, yeah, I'm in that one, not that one.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I'm in that one. Can't, but whoever plays in that second one, I don't know about that guy, or something to that extent.
I don't think that there's anything like well, at least once both of those casts are able to talk about it, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with saying you did that show. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying you played that character. Multiple versions of dubs have been around for as long as anime has been existent in America. I think that it's just weird that, like, where there was
talking about Saint Seiya.
Oh, Saint Seiya. Yeah, I don't know too much about the history of the older dubs for those, and it's not something that I can like. It's one of those things. What's up?
I was going to say I was talking. Okay, if we're gonna release the curtains, I was talking about you.
Oh yeah, I don't.
Yeah, you couldn't talk about it until the press release happened.
Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot about that actually. No, I remember, but no, like I remember that, like, it was weird that, and you know, I do still feel weird that they never, like, had a full-on cast list for the classic dub of Seiya. I really wish that they had done something like that, because yeah, now that I remember, like, they didn't actually release like a full cast list for Saint Seiya. The only actors that got credited for the 80s dub were people who announced their involvement. So the only people that are credited are people, the source for that credit is the actors themselves. Which, I mean, in one way, it's like, okay, cool, you can trust those actors to say that they did it, but in the same way, it's better to have an official source that people can point to and say, like, yes, these are the people that worked on this project. For the Seiya reboot, they at least had the credits in the actual episode themselves, because the English version of the Seiya reboot is the original audio for that. Where they animated to our English audio for that, and they actually properly credited us in that one. But yeah, for the Seiya redub of the 80s and stuff like that, it was really weird that Netflix didn't have like an official cast list. I know that most Netflix dubs nowadays, at the end, if you stick around and you ignore the start next episode button or whatever, they have started to list a lot of the dubbing studios that do all the different language dubs for that stuff. So I wonder if that was just something that fell through around the time that the Seiya dub came around or something. But no, yeah. Credit your actors, credit your writers, credit your translators, credit everybody who worked on your thing, because they brought value to that project.
And for the love of God, stop losing the Saint Seiya IP. Right?
Yeah. They need to put that on Blu-ray or something, because now it's nowhere.
It's nowhere. Legally.
I just say it's nowhere.
Well, you see, if it's out of print... Anyway...
I'm not listening to that part of the... No, just joking.
But if it's out of print, it's fair game. If it's in print, support the official release. But with that, is there anything you'd like to say, since you're having to leave soon? Is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners, to the majority of audiences of one, maybe two people? Do you have anything you'd like to say? Because the floor is yours. Before I let the floor is yours, guys, I know what you're thinking. The editor, Swan, is not here. That's right. Well, he flew the coop, unfortunately. And I hope you stuck around for the entirety of this. I don't know why I say we. I'm a one-man show now, for the most part. I mean, I enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully my editor will edit this correctly. It'll be his first time. And shout out to him. He's cool. But besides that, I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna have to get used to saying I instead of we. I hope you enjoyed this little interview, the podcast episode thing we did. I
Yeah.
hope you liked, subscribed, and commented. Hope you, and maybe you'll stick around. Maybe you won't. But we hope here, or I hope here, that we sat back, relaxed, and enjoyed this small piece of paradise. Take it away, Bryson.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I do. I hope people stick around and listen to future interviews and podcast episodes. I had a lot of great fun this time. Sorry if I got a little rambly myself, but I guess the takeaway, if anything, from this was just that with all the tangents and everything, it's this production on the anime side is made up of many individual people who all have reasons for the decisions that they make. I just ask that people try to understand the reasoning behind those reasons and try not to make too many harsh judgment calls without like thinking about the context that might have gone behind those decisions. And then play games you enjoy, watch shows you enjoy, watch movies you enjoy, and just find things that speak to you and let them influence your life in a positive way. And also, they need to make more audio description dubs. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. With that being said, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this small piece of paradise, and look forward for future videos to come. What they might be, I have no idea at this point, but they'll be in the future. All right, and I'm going to try and stop this recording.
All right. Thank you.
Talking.